Hi everyone, sorry for the lack of videos recently. I've just been taking a bit of a break and been on holiday. But when I came back, I was pleased to see that this new locomotive had arrived, which is Hornby's brand new 9F, which has been in the works for quite a while. Kind of just came out the blue, and I got an email to say it would be arriving within a couple of days. I didn't even know it was due to be released yet. I thought it was going to be later in the year. So that was a pleasant surprise. But in this video, I'm just going to have a quick look at it, see how it performs, and take a closer look at the detail. And then I will crack on and get it weathered. So in terms of the actual look of the locomotive itself, it is pretty good, to be honest. The boiler is die cast, which means it's really heavy. That doesn't necessarily make it any more powerful. I found it still, it's not got the most torque in the motor, but it's still a nice touch because you've not got the seam lines on the boiler and things like that. It's got loads of separately fitted parts, which is great, like the handrails, the kind of supports there on the smoke deflectors, all the rivet detail, the pipe work. One thing I noticed that like the safety valves there are metal, and that kind of contrast with some of the plastic details there as well. They do look a little bit plasticky, but once they're weathered, I find you don't notice anyway, so that's not really a major criticism. I've got the one with the automatic stoker in the tender. If I move it forward slightly, you'll be able to see that. I mean, it's a small detail really, not going to see that when I've got a coal load in it. If you come down a bit lower, you can see it there in between the locomotive and the tender. So one issue that I found with this is I've got mine close coupled. I try and close couple everything on mine. I've got third radius curves, but I find that pretty much everything can get around them on the close coupled setting. I'll show you underneath. It's got the typical drawbar between the two. There's two settings on this, but due to a metal plate just here, you're not actually able to use the close coupled setting on mine. So I actually had to snip the drawbar, the first setting off the drawbar to get it to close couple. So now I can only have mine close coupled. I wouldn't be able to put it back to the previous setting because I've cut that piece off. So a bit of a gamble on an expensive model, but sometimes you've got to do what you got to do. But it works brilliantly, so it's that gamble's paid off. So if you've got one of these, let me know if you have managed to close couple yours, or if it's just a quirk with mine that I wasn't able to do it. Anyway, the model comes with two crew as well, which is a nice extra touch. The cab detail's really good. You can see all sorts going on in there. The tender as well is nice. I've got the detail pack added on mine as well. These steps are interesting. They kind of attach into the centre of the locomotive rather than kind of glue onto the frame. So they're a bit bendy, a bit flexible. You can kind of bash them around a bit and they won't come flying off, which is quite good. And then we've got the coupling hook there that I've had to snip a bit so I can get my KD coupling on. And then there's a vacuum pipe as well that can go on there. I'm going to have to mess around with that to see if I can get that fitted, because this coupling obviously needs to slide this way. So I might just be able to cut it so it goes on top of it. Right, so looks wise, it's great. Performance wise, I've had a bit of a mare with my one, but I've got it sorted now, which is the good news. When I took this out the box, it was a terrible run. It had tight spots, it was jerky, it wasn't very smooth. So I ended up running it in for a while. That made a slight difference, but not particularly. I ended up taking the base keeper plate off, and there was barely any oil on it at all. So I've oiled it all up and gave it another run in, and it's improved significantly. So that's just something to be aware of if you're buying one of these. I guess that's something you want to check early on. I've seen other people review these on YouTube and theirs are fine, so just something to be aware of. Right, let's get this moving. So when I took this out of the box, it wouldn't have got anything close to this sort of level of slow speed. Didn't even have the tender on the track properly there, that's why it wasn't quite that smooth. It's still not the smoothest locomotive I've got, but it's better than it was, and that's the main thing. It's smooth enough, and it's good at anything other than a really slow crawl. Again, if you look at the pull away there, it's still not, I'm just slowly turning the controller up, it's still not the smoothest, but I found with other Hornby locomotives like my Duchess and my Britannia as well, they took way longer to run in than the initial half an hour. Like they had tight spots and weren't the best runners for hours and hours before the performance smoothed out. And now they're two of the smoothest locomotives that I've got. So I think it'll only really get better as I keep running it. In terms of running through points, all mine are Pico medium radius streamline points, so I've not found there to be any issues at all. Yep, gets through those no problem. And then this set of points as well. Right, so there's a quick review of the locomotive. I won't go into too much detail because there's plenty of other videos up already covering that. So in terms of weathering this, I'm not going to go too over the top, too crazy. Not that you can go too over the top on the 9F. I'm going to try and keep the kind of shiny polished boiler look, just because I think it adds a lot of kind of presence and weight to the locomotive. Not that this needs any more presence or weight added to it. It's one of the biggest and baddest steam locomotives to run in Britain, but I still just think it will look cool on this one. And then if we want to take it further later, we can always do that. So we've got the locomotive in the weathering booth, which is just my dining room table, and I'm going to start by just giving the locomotive under frame and the tender an overall spray of a mix of Tamiya Brown, Tamiya Flat Black and Tamiya Grey as well. So I'm just getting this all over the wheels, under frame of the tender, on the smoke box as well, the running plate, the inside and the back of the tender, the cab roof, and not really being too careful where I'm spraying this, to be honest. If you get too much on there, you can always just kind of use thinners to just remove it, which gives a nice effect as well. Right here I'm just adding some Tamiya brown mixed with a little bit of black as well, just to tone it down a little bit and take the edge off. I'm just adding this in streaks to the front of the cylinders, a little bit here and there on the wheels, just to kind of mix up the tone a little bit so it's not all one colour. I'm adding this to the axle boxes on the tender as well. And I'm adding a few streaks as well over the pipework and the boiler. You can see that on the tender there, I've just put a couple of streaks on the side. I'm also adding this to the inside of the tender. So here I'm using a rust colour on the axle boxes just to bring a little bit of colour variation there as well. A bit of the rust colour around the pipework, a little bit on the underside of the firebox there you can see above the last two wheels, and of course on the front of the cylinders as well, which was an area that often got quite rusty. You can see I've done the same to the other side as well. I'm also adding a bit of this colour on the buffers and also on the inside of the tender as well in the coal space. Next up, I've got my paintbrush and I've dipped it in isopropyl alcohol, and I'm just gently rubbing off a bit of the paint on the front buffer beam. I'll do this on the rear buffer beam as well. And it just kind of leaves, almost like a wash, it just leaves the darker paint in the recesses, and gives them a slightly kind of cleaner and polished look, like kind of rainwater has washed some of the dirt away and left it kind of ingrained around the recesses. Next up, I've just got a bit of matte black paint. I've dipped a cotton bud in this, and I'm just putting a blob on each of the buffers just to simulate grease. Right, next up we're doing the gloss varnish. So I've masked the smoke box and the cab roof and the underframe with some masking tape, as you can see, and I'm just giving the boiler and the tender sides a spray with the gloss varnish. So I tend to kind of thin this 50-50, a few drops of varnish, a couple of drops of water. You don't need too much. And I'm just doing multiple coats of this. So I'll spray the whole locomotive, I'll wait maybe a minute, spray the whole thing again, wait a minute, spray the whole thing again, wait a minute, and just repeat that maybe 5 times to just build up a few layers. And that just gives that boiler that kind of weighty shine to it that looks really nice, especially in contrast with the matte areas as well. And hopefully if you put the tape in the right place, when you peel this off, it shouldn't have got into the areas you don't want it. I noticed that the smoke deflectors looked a little bit too matte at this stage, so I just put a little bit of gloss varnish on those as well to give them a little bit of a shine. Next up is the weathering powders. I'm using the Humbrol smoke colour here on the smoke box, which just gives it that really nice contrast with the rest of the locomotive. I'm also doing this on the front of the smoke box, on the cab roof, the front bit of the tender there that you can see, and also on the rear of the tender as well. Again, you can always varnish these powders to sit them down. I'm not going to do this on this locomotive just because I've used the gloss varnish already. I don't want to have to mask areas and matte varnish bits too, so I'm just going to try and not handle this too much. And if I need to reapply the powders, at a later date, I can always do that. So I'm just adding a bit of a mix of the rust weathering powder with the dark earth one here. I'm just applying that to the front of the cylinders. It's always better to apply a bit too much, go a little bit overboard on the weathering powders, because one, if you're varnishing them, a lot of it will come off as you varnish and you'll get a much reduced effect. Similarly, after a couple of months of this being on the layout, the weathering powders will have kind of toned down a bit anyway, so it's not really a problem if you're overdoing it at this stage. I'm adding a bit of the rust powder there to the underframe, to the bottom of the firebox that you can see poking out. Again, the cylinders, a little bit on the motion, and on the tender underframe and axle boxes too. Again, this always looks great on BR standards because of the high running plate. You can see all the wheels, you can see the frames. So this kind of, the texture that these weathering powders give is really, really visible, especially in the close-up shots. Here I'm doing the tender coal space as well, making sure that's really rusty because that wouldn't have been cleaned very often. Next, I'm just adding a bit of the white weathering powder just to highlight some of the detail, almost like dry brushing. It looks a bit over the top at this point. It'll be completely toned down when you varnish or as this kind of slowly wears off. But it's just great for highlighting those raised details. Especially the edges as well, like the edges there of the cylinder, you can see it just makes them pop out a little bit more and just gives them a little bit more definition. I'm just using a bit more isopropyl alcohol here on a cotton bud just to polish those the pipes there, just so you can see a bit of the brassy kind of colour shining through. Next up, I'm giving the wheels a clean. I'm just using a 9-volt battery, cotton bud dipped in isopropyl alcohol. I'm just holding the battery onto the tender wheels, which makes the wheels turn, and just cleaning them up. And last, a bit of coal added to the tender. Need to be careful here because the tender isn't sealed. The coal is spilled through into the cab a bit and loads of glue just poured out onto the table as I was doing this. So just something to be aware of. Just lean the tender back and it should be fine. That is the locomotive on the track finished. So I'm just going to give this a good run really, but once I put a weathered locomotive on the track, even though I've cleaned the wheels, it'll always run a little bit sketchy for the first couple of minutes, and after just running it at high speed, it just kind of burns off any of that, scrapes off any of that kind of paint that's just left on the wheels. So I'm pleased with how this one's turned out. I've kind of got the you know, the elements of rust and neglect in the hard to reach spots, but I've got the kind of accessible areas nicely polished, like they've been given a bit of attention. So I hope that was useful. If you've got any questions or anything, just give me a shout in the comments and I'll try and get back to you. But I'm looking forward to filming a few running videos with this and getting on the big layout later this week. So should have some good videos of that coming up too. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.